Welcome to our class today. It is great to have you. Today we'll start with our course lesson about assimilation and removal. And before we do that, Gordon, would you be willing to offer our prayer for us?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much.
Dear Heavenly Father, we're so grateful we have been able to come to this history class, and please bless us to have the Spirit with us, and please bless my sister until that he will be inspired in what he has to say, and we'll take away great principles from this class, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Gordon. We really appreciate that prayer. Well, friends, here we go. What's interesting is we take a look at this topic, looking at these tribes that are east of the Mississippi River. As you may remember from the reading, there really were sort of four different responses that were considered in the 1800s, taking a look at what to do about this issue. During the first 4 decades of the 19th century, the 1800s, the United States government attempted to solve the problem of native peoples who lived east of the Mississippi and directly in the path of American expansion. Should the government destroy them, protect them in their homelands, assimilate them into American civilization, or remove them to more distant lands west of the Mississippi? So here's what I'd like to do. Before going any further, I'd like to talk through each of those options with you and have you reason why someone might be in favor of each option. So go ahead and take a look for a moment. Some of them may seem a little bit easier than others, but all of them were considered at one time or another during the first 4 decades of the 19th century. Go ahead, take a look at those options, and then what would you reason as why someone would want to advocate for each of the 4 different positions about what to do about Native Americans east of the Mississippi River? Please, which one would you like to take first? Mrs. Andelin?
I was, just as a general comment,
Yes.
I was just going to say that I think the response to each of those would be greatly influenced by the experience an individual had with it.
Sure.
If someone had had part of their family killed by them,
Yeah.
of course they'd want to destroy them.
Sure.
In most cases. So I don't know. So I'm just thinking it depends on whether interaction can. That's all.
Oh, I love that. And certainly we'll see that history that each individual may have had would play a large role in influencing that decision. So I love that comment. What do you think, though? Because I know that you're not necessarily in the shoes, even though you may have tried to imagine what that would have been like. So I am curious, what do you think should have been done? Because really, this is a really difficult question. There are lots of different sides to it. But tell me why you could see some advocating for, along with past experiences, of course, that they may have had, destroying these tribes in the way. Could you see anybody thinking of some rational reason for doing that? Because some did. Not saying it's necessarily the right reason, but Leah, please.
Some might have thought that by destroying them all, then they wouldn't have to deal with them at all. Like if they had to move them,
Okay.
like what happened in this situation, it was really hard to move them, and they didn't want to move anyway.
Yeah.
But some people might think that it might just be easier as a whole.
Okay, great. Thank you. There's certainly convenience, easier. Thank you for that. Anybody else? What about one of the other reasons? What if we were to take a look at this idea of protecting them in their homelands, meaning you don't have to move, we'll sort of build around you. This was your land, before we started moving in here, so we will protect you exactly where you are. Why would somebody advocate for that?
Well, I kind of have something that would make that wouldn't work.
Oh, okay. Let's maybe talk about why it might work first, and then you'll see, because the other two will kind of get us to, I think, what you're going to say.
Well, then you could kind of push the Indians smaller, because usually they cover a large expanse of space.
Okay, so
you could kind of condense them.
Could condense them. Let's look at it this way. We just draw just a tiny map here for a moment. Just imagine that this is state A. We'll just make it simple. Okay, and let's say that originally, before white settlement started moving westward, that native tribes were in a swath like this, and that maybe the tribes, shared some of this land, and here they had some homes. And so essentially what this was saying, this second option, is that you could come and cross the state boundaries and settle, but you would have to respect the original tribal boundaries, and you could never move into them. That you couldn't ask the natives to buy their land. You couldn't try to take it forcibly. Essentially, you would just say, well, that's theirs, and I guess we can fill in with our homes this area here, but we won't move into this other area. Why might some people say they like that idea? Because we'll see there are many people who didn't like that idea.
Seems fair.
It seems fair. I mean, you think of it this way, right? And obviously people might disagree with this, but let's say that somebody wanted to move to Orem, and they really like the plot of land that the Andalins live on. Does it make sense that they might not be able to move on to the area that you currently live on? Right? I mean, you're there. It's your home, and obviously we have a little bit of a different situation where you purchase that land. It's measured out, and people could find that there's a plot of that land that's yours. It's been surveyed, on a map, etc. But in some ways, right? You're there. They were there. Just like you wouldn't want somebody moving in on your property and saying, "Oh, hey, it looks like you're not using this space of your backyard. We'll just put our camper here. Is it okay? We put the RV right here. You might say, wait." Some people thought of it in that way. Okay. Well, what about this one? What about assimilate them into American civilization? You may remember General Washington was in favor of trying to invite them to do this. Why might somebody be in favor of assimilation? Trying to make them similar to bring them into American culture, help them to learn it so that they could then live it for themselves. Why might someone want to do that? What would you reason? Please, Gordon.
They could be more united.
Okay.
They wouldn't have fights.
Ooh.
A lot.
Yeah. That's really interesting because think of it. If you look at this, well here, right, this is talking about living a separate existence, right? There's the native side and then there's the white side. And some people might say, well, that could be good. Other people might say, well, yeah, but then we'll always be living in two separate worlds. And well, what about if we grow a lot bigger than them? Wouldn't it be better if we just figured out a way to get along and live together? In fact, I mean, let's be honest. We believe that the hand of the Lord was in the movement of these peoples, these European nations to the west. And as a result, they had things to offer that the entire world needed to be a part of. Just like today, right? We try to assimilate the world. We invite the world to be assimilated into the gospel culture. We don't just say, oh, you're Buddhist? Oh, okay, well, I won't talk about Christ then because, well, I just want you to stay Buddhist and I'll stay Christian. And, we should never try to change that. We believe so strongly in our message that the gospel of Jesus Christ is now rolling forth to every nation as those nations let us in. We're there. We try in every way we can to help them learn about something we feel they really might want. And so certainly some people would say, hey, Christianity, why not try to assimilate these tribes? Right? Look at our Christian constitutional republic. Why not try to introduce that to them? Because certainly that's a lot better than some of the things that they're practicing. Right? If you have orange juice and people come and sit at your table for breakfast, wouldn't you be rude not to offer them a drink? You wouldn't force it down their throat, but doesn't it make sense to say, oh, would you like some orange juice? Oh, you wouldn't? Okay. Oh, you would? Great. Right? And so certainly this idea of assimilation, many would say, oh, well, we're trying to invite them to enjoy the truths, the blessings that we have. And let's face it, who was the dominant culture? Right? Certainly the Indians were on the decline, right? And so looking down the road, wouldn't it be smart to be able to live with the group that's going to be running things? And so that was certainly a very strong position that many took. Now, what about this one? Because this is one that I think is very, very interesting. Go ahead. What would you reason about why someone might want to remove tribes to the more distant lands west of the Mississippi? There was a lot about this in the background that you could have reasoned, also a lot about this in the source that you could sort of look at it in reverse and do some reasoning there. Why might someone advocate for that? Please, Mrs. Updike. We've had a microphone, just several of them. We'll migrate some of them this way. Thank you for that.
That was a short-sighted solution.
Yes.
Because it was just delaying the agony
Sure.
that they had to face at some point, because eventually they would reach the Pacific.
Right.
And they did not have the vision at that time. I think manifest destiny is something that we understand fairly thoroughly, because we're at this point in history, and we can see how history played out. So we have the benefit of all of that hindsight that they didn't have.
Yes.
And so they may not have had any vision of the fact that we would expand from sea to sea.
That's right.
So, but it was
Yes.
a delay.
Yes, definitely. I love that. And then truly, you think about Andrew Jackson. I mean, based on what we know, we assume he was being honest. He really thought that was the solution. Just if we just put them far enough away, they'll do their own thing and can do it as they wish, and we'll do our own thing, and it'll work. But as you said, with the great blessing of hindsight, certainly short-sighted.
And besides, that was a drastic relocation,
Mm-hmm.
which wasn't fair at all.
That's right. That's right. And we'll talk about that just in a few moments. Thank you so much for that. So friends, here's my question then, okay? And I'd like you to write this down before you may be influenced by anyone else peeking at you, and when you raise your hand, and then maybe you want to put it down. Okay. Would you go ahead, of the 4 solutions that we see up here that people strongly contended for, one or the other, in the early 19th century, destroy them, protect them where they were, in their homelands, the original homelands, assimilate them into American civilization, or remove them to more distant, let's see, I think we can cancel this. All right, there we go. All right, or remove them to more distant lands west of the Mississippi. Which would be your position if you were just doing your best to figure things out? Go ahead and just given what you do know now, I am curious, do you feel that there was a best decision of the 4 at that time? Because those are the 4 that were batted around. Which one do you think would have been the best to go with? Would you go ahead and just write that down, just so that it's not influenced by anyone else voting, and you're kind of peeking and saying, oh, I guess I'll go with the safe majority, or whatever it may have been? You have yours, Rachel? Great. You have yours, Gordon? JT? Still thinking?
Yeah.
Still thinking? Leah? Logan? Still thinking? Okay. Caleb? Great. Camilla? Mrs. Updike?
We have a combination of 2.
Sure. Of course. Mrs. Andelin, are you? Okay. Great. Good to see you. Mrs. Parker? Great. All right, friends. Logan? JT? Have you had time? Or do you still need just a moment? You're good. You'll be fine. We'll come to you last then. All right. Raise your hand if you think just destroying them at this point would have been the best thing to do. Okay. Raise your hand. That's good. Raise your hand if you think that protecting them in their homelands would have been the best. We've got 3. Wonderful. I'd love to hear your reasoning, please. Mrs. Updike, and then, and just the microphone. Just thank you. I'm so sorry. Thank you.
Along with assimilation.
Okay, please, and go ahead and explain.
But it could not be forced. It had to be their choice.
Yes.
But if we were truly Christ-like in the way we handled this, and we acknowledged their dignity as indigenous people to this land, we would protect them in their homelands and fill in around them. Yes, there could be problems with that, but I think by then we were at a point where those were pretty much under control. And that would lend to assimilation if we were surrounding them, but honoring them on their land.
Yeah.
As God's children.
Yes. Thank you. Well said. Mrs. Parker, please.
I agree.
Okay. Oh, wonderful. Caleb, anything slightly different, or and then Leah?
Not really anything terribly different, but just in the fact that the Cherokee had assimilated, and they had done so willingly. I think they were prodded in that direction, but they hadn't giving them trouble about it, and they were still there. They were in their homelands. They were protected.
Right.
Well, they should have been.
Yeah.
By law, they were protected. Those laws were not enforced. But they did assimilate to a point, and they were protected. And so it's proof that it did work. It just wasn't satisfying to everyone.
That's right, to the states, especially Georgia. We'll talk about that. Excellent point. Leah?
I think that something that would be good with combining those two, is letting them like keep their ceremonies and their beliefs and stuff, because they had very many ceremonies and things that were very dear to them and very part of their culture. So I think that that would be a good thing to keep as long, or adding on the assimilate.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. All right. Anybody else for just assimilation? Was that your vote, or did you have a different combination slightly? Mrs. Anderson, please. Oh, Angelin, excuse me.
Okay.
Sorry.
I just think that how I got it. This is buzzing. Sorry. And how the Saints did it in Utah and surrounding areas. There were some incidents, there were some problems, but there were also missionaries called, learned their languages, and went and taught them the gospel. They shared with them. They were told to share their goods when they were hungry, and charity and love always works best.
Yes. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for that. All right. Anybody else who hasn't told us yet? Please, Gordon.
So, to assimilate with them, that's kind of like what we're encouraged to do, like to find, like, kind of to find the strong points in other religions and kind of tie them into ours. That's the same type of, well, not the same, but it's an example of assimilating the Indians into the American culture, and so we want to kind of invite them in and make them feel like they are loved, I guess.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that. Was anybody for removal? Of curiosity, west of the Mississippi? Nobody? All right. Camilla, what did you choose?
I chose, well, I first chose assimilation,
Okay.
but now after hearing Mrs. Updike's reasoning, I thought that's probably the best option.
Okay, well, wonderful. Thank you for that. All right, JT, the big choice. What was it for you by the end? Assimilation as well. Okay, great. Thank you for that. You know, friends, let's take a look for a moment, because this is interesting. Well, what we will see is that Jefferson will advocate for assimilation, and the U.S. will make some strides in that direction, but we'll see that things will really change, especially after Andrew Jackson decides to completely ignore the Supreme Court's ruling about the constitutionality of just having the states kick them off any land that the states wanted. The U.S. Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. The federal government needs to be in charge of all of this, and if they don't want to move, they don't need to move. And essentially, we'll see that Jackson didn't like that, and so came up with sort of a different plan that the Congress then supported. So let's just take a look at this one for a moment here. We'll go to this one here. When Jackson was elected president in 1828, he vowed to water the seeds of Indian removal that Jefferson had planted. What you'll see with Jefferson is trying assimilation, but if not, then we'll have to remove them, right? Sort of this ultimatum. In his 1830 State of the Union address, Jackson asked the American public, what good man would prefer a country covered with forests and ranged by a few thousand savages to our extensive republic studded with cities, towns, and prosperous farms, embellished with all the improvements that art can devise or industry execute, occupied by more than 12 million happy people, and filled with all the blessings of civilization, liberty, and religion? Jackson saw Indians as obstacles in the way of human progress, obstacles that needed to be removed. In May 1830, Jackson secured Congress's passing of the Indian Removal Act, which authorized him to conduct treaties of removal with every tribe living east of the Mississippi. Like I said, this was in complete violation of the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling. So here's the interesting thing to consider. You have a president who is at odds with the U.S. Supreme Court, essentially saying, well, John Marshall has spoken, let him enforce it. I'm the president. That's a very interesting dilemma to have. This is Updike. Is that a comment, or please?
I don't understand how that flew in light of Marbury versus Madison. How is he allowed to get away with that?
When you have the Congress agreeing with the president, they just figure they could sort of steamroll, and the Supreme Court interpreting constitutionality kind of went out the window. Not that it should have.
Look at Obama.
Oh,
Well, we should understand exactly what's happening.
but for the executive branch and the legislative branches to completely ignore the judicial branch once they have ruled is unconstitutional.
It is.
On the face of it.
Yes. Suddenly you've said, we don't like the check and balance system, so we're going to get rid of one of the checks.
Well, we don't like Obama doing that today.
Right? No, of course, sure. And that's why this is really an interesting thing. So my question is there anybody in here who, because there were a lot of people who really felt this way, is there anybody in here who can sort of see where the Congress was coming from? Is there anybody here who could see why the Removal Act would have been attractive, other than simply convenience and we get the land we want? Please.
A lot of citizens.
And is that one off, Mrs. Updike? Okay, is there another one that might be on? Let's see. Thank you so much.
A lot of the citizens feared the Indians and saw them as a threat.
Sure.
And they saw them as savages that would come and massacre them because there were Indian massacres.
Sure.
And so the Congress often does what the people want. And I think that a majority of the people feared the Indians, so they wanted them off their land.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you. Well said. Logan, you're just stretching? Just joking. That's okay. Well, friends, think with me for a moment. If you were to meet this man, talk to him, have a moment to speak face to face, what would you tell him? Just like if you were to meet the U.S. President today regarding similar issues, what would you say? Because I think this is an interesting question, just sort of to reason through. Please.
He should treat the Indians the same way he treated his wife.
Okay.
And they had a spectacular relationship.
Yes.
And they understood Christian charity and respect. And it should have been across the board.
Yes. Thank you. Well said. Oh, so well said. Thank you. Anything else? That if you really had this moment to just say, no, President Jackson, please, can we talk for a moment? Please. Yes.
On other constitutional issues, he was dynamite.
Yes, exactly. Think of the bank, for example. Yes. Yeah.
And funding and
Yeah.
and the House being the generator of spending bills. He was a bear cat on those issues.
Yes.
So this is an enigma.
Well, no, thank you for that. And I think it is interesting too, as we step back. This has been something I've been thinking a lot about lately. As Elder Holland said, imperfect people are all the Lord has ever had to work with. That must be terribly frustrating to him, yet he deals with it, and so should we, right? And then this idea of, okay, so what do you do when you have somebody who they're doing so well in all these areas, but yet, this is a big deal. This really was. In fact, I want to take a look for a moment at what Caleb was saying. Let's go to the Cherokee of Georgia, because really they were sort of at the firestorm right in the middle of all of this. And this is really sad, because essentially, here's what I'd like you to think about. I'd like you to think for a moment about the Cherokee and what you would say to them if you had been sent by, essentially, President Jackson and others to go and explain to them why he decided that the Supreme Court's ruling wasn't good enough. Especially when you came into Georgia and eventually made it to the Cherokee lands and saw this. Despite being cast as obstacles to American civilization, the Cherokee were the most civilized, according to American standards, of any native people. They wore European clothing, plowed fields, fenced their lands, settled in sedentary agricultural communities, grew corn and cotton like their white neighbors, held slaves, practiced Christianity, were literate, governed themselves in a constitutional republic modeled after that of the U.S., used a written language, published their own newspaper, and had built a host of grist mills, sawmills, powder mills, blacksmith shops, and textile shops. As Cherokee John Ridge said, You asked us to throw off the hunter and warrior state. We did so. You asked us to form a Republican government. We did so, adopting your own as a model. You asked us to cultivate the earth and learn the mechanic arts. We did so. You asked us to learn to read. We did so. You asked us to cast away our idols and worship your God. We did so. What would you say if you were coming to spread the message of removal that you'll need to be out by the end of the month, so to speak? What would you say? Please, Caleb.
Probably, I am so sorry that this is happening no matter what, because they're ignoring the laws and they're ignoring what we're founded on.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that. Anyone else? Say that you met John Rich. You just heard his words. There he is. What would you say to him? What do you think, Isaac? What would you say?
I just kind of walked in, but
Oh, is that okay?
From what I read from back there, it'd be hard to kick them out. I wouldn't personally. It'd be hard to receive the instructions to kick them out when I know that this was originally their land and we kind of were the ones. I feel like if it weren't, if Heavenly Father's whole plan wasn't into this, I feel like it should be the Native Americans telling us to adopt their culture and their land. And I understand that this is a place, this is Heavenly Father's place that He sent us to receive freedom, and He guided people in doing that. But there was a lot of unfair things that happened to the Native Americans in their land and the Lamanite genealogy or blood, whatever. So
yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for that, Isaac. Appreciate that comment. All right, Camilla, what do you think? You've been sent to spread the message. What would you say?
I don't know.
Sorry, just the microphone. Thank
Oh,
you
yeah.
so much.
That would be something that would be really hard to follow through with to do. Were there people who tried to protect the Indians who tried?
There were. The problem was that there were so many Georgians who were for removal that it made it very difficult, and there was lots of violence surrounding removal, and those who tried to stand in the way essentially weren't able to do so. Thank you, though, for that. Yeah, I mean, this is one of those really tough moments in history where you're thinking, wow, if I got that order, I mean, what would I do? And on the one hand, you have, we believe in being law-abiding citizens and that sort of thing, and on the other hand, if this is just morally wrong, then certainly would you want to do it? No, and therefore what? And you can think through a number of different scenarios for yourself. What I'd like to do right now, though, is to go to this document, because I think this is a really fascinating source document. And here's how I'd like to split you up. I'll give you a 1, a 2, or a 3. Okay? As you turn to the source for this document, as you take a look at this Memorial of the Cherokee Nation, which is a collaborative effort in 1830 by many in the Cherokee Nation, what you'll see is that it is from the Cherokee point of view, and it's all the reasons why removal is wrong. Okay, and what I'd like you to do is I'll have some of you who will be lawyers for the Cherokee, meaning in this sort of pretend court case that we're going to have as part of our report activity, I'll ask you to go through the document and come up with your top 5 reasons that the Cherokee should stay. I'll also, though, and this is tough, but I'll ask some of you, if you are a number 2, okay, as I come around, say 1, 2, 3, if you're number 2, to look at this document and read against the source, meaning find anything that you could to say, now wait a minute, if you look at this from a different perspective, you could actually argue against that, as some lawyers did in looking at this, saying, no, you need to remove. You need to go west of the Mississippi. Yes, sir.
Could we use references from
Sure.
the Book of Mormon to
Sure.
support our ideas?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes, sir. It's 1830, so it was published. You could have had it hot off the presses. So, one of the first copies at this time. And then you'll also see that there'll be a number 3. What I'll ask you to do is to just read through and consider both sides, because I'll ask you to be a jury. And you'll actually vote based on what the lawyers present for each side. Okay? So that'll be our little activity. So let me give you a 1, a 2, or a 3. And I guess you can scurry around now if you want to sit in a certain place. All right. Let's see. I'll just start. I'll just start. Okay. JT, you'll be a 1. Okay. So meaning you're against removal. You're for the Cherokee. You'll be a 2. You'll be a 3. Okay. Then we've got a 1, a 2, and a 3. You'll be a 1, a 2, and a 3. And this is up to you. Can be the judge and consult with the jury if you like. No. Okay, but friends, are there any questions? So if you are for the Cherokee staying in their lands, if you're a lawyer for the Cherokee, if you are a 1, go ahead and reason through 5 of the best reasons for them to stay. And that's really what this document is about. That's the perspective it's written from. If you are a 2, though, read through this document and find things that you might say, now wait a minute here. You're talking about, we wish to remain on the land of our fathers. You could say, well, but really, is this, really the land of your fathers? Because at one time, this was, and once again, knowing what we know now, this was the land of Adam and Eve. And really, this is everybody's land. It's not just yours. Maybe you were here after Adam and Eve moved away, and you've been here before we happened to come again. But does that make sense? You could really try to look at each of the arguments and come up with something. Okay, and that would be, and come up with five sort of bones to pick with the Cherokee argument. Okay, like you would if you were from the perspective of a lawyer who is for removal. Okay, and then last but not least, if you are a juror, if you are a number 3, would you go ahead and skim through the document and try to really look at what you think would be the most important points to emphasize on either side of the argument, either against removal or for removal, so that you can be informed as a juror. We would hope that our jurors are informed. Okay? All right. Any questions? Okay, I'll turn you loose. I'll come around and see if you need any help. And then, maybe 10 minutes or so, we'll just see how long it takes to. Then we'll come and we'll have our lawyers for the Cherokee present first. Then we'll have our lawyers who are for removal against the Cherokee position present second. And then we'll have our jurors collaborate and consult together and then give us the vote. All right? And we'll give you a very difficult job. We'll have you be for removal and against the Cherokee, so that you can help some of our others. Okay. Okay. Good. Great. Go ahead, friends. Start that reasoning and relating process. So essentially, we're taking a look at the document, the Cherokee Memorial, and we've got lawyers who are for keeping them in their land, lawyers who are against, therefore for removal. Which I think is more difficult. The jurors who they'll decide how we do. So, in fact, friends, if you'd like, you could move into groups if you think that would be helpful for you. To maybe talk through some things. You could go through it together if you'd like. However you'd like to do that reasoning and recording of those reasons. So, all right, the twos can all sit in this area here. Brother Anderson is also a 2. And then JT, are you a 1? Is that right? And then 4. Oh, you're a 3. Okay, we got juror, and then you're a 1. Okay. And then you're a 1, okay, great. Maybe you can find whatever seat you'd like. And then Gordon, you're a juror too, is that right? Okay, so maybe the jurors could get together and talk about what you'd be looking for in the arguments for either side to see if they hit those points in their little exposition. Great, thank you. Any questions, jurors?
Are we supposed to do it? We're not supposed to do it based on opinion, just what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah, the first sentence in here.
Yes, then of course I think your own opinion of like valuing the different arguments would of course come into it. But for example, let's say that you feel very, very strong right now that removal was just a terrible thing. But yeah, let's say that the people who are arguing for Cherokee don't have great reasons. Then, and then let's say they come up with, 10 blow you out of the water type. Whoa, that's actually kind of an important thing about, probably should side with them, but I'll let you have your conscience. So, as a juror. Any questions? Yours is nice because essentially people that's mostly who this document is written from. So if you can sort of find the 5 best arguments in this document, then you'll have some good ones.
Is this the Cherokee?
Yeah, and this was it was a collaborative document, and so Cherokee, like John Lynch and others, got together to write this in their own defense. Good question. Any questions, my friend? Good? Okay. Okay, great.
Idealistic.
The other, the white people's pet.
That's true.
We never stop.
Get a bruise every couple days.
Or would it be? Yeah.
You could do either. If you think one is easier to argue for you, that's fine. Yeah, obviously the Cherokee are writing about their own position, but really what they said was said in other words by the native tribes.
And also, are we
Yeah, I would kind of do a hybrid, meaning I think I'd try to consider the arguments that they would have had, and from a present perspective to say, oh, no, that's why they would have felt that was a good argument.
Yeah.
And I think that is important, but at the same time, you don't have to be blind to truths that you know. And you really could say, no, we're right, that kind of thing. Really.
Already historically.
Right.
Okay.
The blessings of calamity taken away from them and scattered and then given to the Gentiles.
Mormon 5:15-21, or was it on the second?
Let's say it was in
Second Nephi 26:15. I think the last.
One thing that I'll say, just because yours is more difficult to argue, but the thing you know is that even though from today's standpoint we'd say this was much more difficult to argue, this is the one that was much more popular then, and this is the one that happened because it had the backing of so many, which is an interesting thing about, you're gonna hear we're struggling, and I'll tell you, just to try to be helpful, I'll let you reason through it, but let me show you the line that for them, even most people, it's just the very beginning. It's actually the very first line. Some suppose it will be for our advantage. There were many who were saying, no, this is honestly for their good. If we could just get them away, then they'll be able to do their own thing, can enjoy their own culture, they'll grow away separately. We won't have the fighting, we won't have the stealing of land, we won't be, you know what I mean? And so there's a lot that comes with that, saying like, hey, we've tried assimilation. Many tribes don't want to assimilate, so let them do their own thing independently
Those that are
away.
resisting it is assimilation.
Right. Now, to the Cherokee, though, this is a different case, but even then they're saying, well, but we want their land, and right now you have some people who are killing Cherokee because they want their land. They're saying, listen, if we can't get our own people to stop, it'll be better for them. Fine, they can keep all this civilization somewhere else where we won't bother them because we won't want that land, because we're all going to decide nobody wants that land. Right, right.
There's so many tribes out west. Like,
Good,
yeah.
and killing justified.
Right.
You can't
The
just
means,
force
right.
and
Yeah.
expect
And we'll do something wrong now, because at the end, it'll be better.
Right.
Yeah. Right, right,
Yeah.
yeah. So like, that was a compelling argument for many who just said, we can't stop American expansion, even if we wanted to. Therefore, let's just get them to a place where nobody will want to go, and then they can live happily ever after, and will live happily ever after. Though, it is kind of hard to swallow that. People really thought that would work. But some did,
It's almost, it's almost similar to what they do with
Let's imagine,
Right.
let's just foreign people came.
Sure,
here.
exactly. Yes, yes. Liberia and all these different places, right?
But the difference there is that it was like, as big as the message which it had. I think there's definitely a better way to do it.
Yeah.
Every third house you go to, you're on a Friday or Saturday night, and not on every home. Every third house you find people stoned or drugged.
But it's still, it's not justice, it justifies that they marched from across and
Yeah,
Almost makes you
killed
want to
a fourth of them.
Yeah, when,
It's a sad shame.
yes.
And Carson tried to set all the ways missionaries that are there assigned to the
Yeah, and this is the interesting thing when you read all three of them mention this someday, but the three documents for the next topic that we're looking at today, where you basically have to say, we don't want to be dependent, wasting away on reservations. We don't want people just giving us food, giving us a place to live.
because
And then you see that talk about the evils of, we'll talk about the evils of the dole, and where things can lead. Oh, so.
That same sort of message of,
Yeah.
give us whatever you will give us, and just read the Bible anyway.
Right.
I was talking about
Is how the
the blankets that they were trading them, they would trade for stuff that blankets
But
would
it's
trade
almost
them.
like
Or
this
purposely like
cycle
taking
of,
sick people who had like diseases
they
and
wanted
so
weapons
they
or,
kill them off.
so you have Indians who built us, and because of that, they ended
Since
up
this Indian
taking that out on
society
the
has
Cherokee.
evolved
They
so much
assimilated
that
them,
others
wanted their lands to have disease.
Right. Well, one of the things though that's interesting is the Cherokee had learned English. They were doing so many things that allowed them to operate in both worlds. That's one of the reasons why we have so much about them, because they were so good at English. And so
Much different than most other tribes.
Right.
They were successful at that aspect.
Yeah, and so that's why in some ways, we know more about them, and not because, so basically where a lot of this comes from, these places, they keep they're dealing with Georgia. You had these settlers who wanted the Cherokee land, and they didn't give it the Supreme Court twice. They kept going with it.
They follow the law.
They follow the law, so.
So they didn't use that.
Anyway, so that's why. It's flashpoint.
Yeah, we're supporting our own position.
You're doing well.
We got the easy.
Sorry I'm late.
Good to have you. Welcome back.
So what are the
So we're talking about assimilation and removal. At this point, we're looking at the Indian Removal Act of 1830. So there's a little report activity where these are lawyers who are for removing the Cherokee and other tribes. These are lawyers who, and I just cite them, so they and then these are lawyers who are against removal and they're siding with the Cherokee. And this is the jury. You can be part of the jury. Yes. Okay. And Camilla is very bright. Would you be willing to fill in, friend? Yes, no, some of the arguments. Thank you.
The only
Yeah, so I think that's the thing.
I can try to find a
Reading and talk about it.
I thought it was like the first couple song where you Steve in my fight in his truck. Yeah. No, he was in his truck. He was on the No, okay, so I was going back way, and he was driving by the Tilton House Center. It was with like his horse in the back. So like, I just he just seems like a more like cowboy in the truck. So it's like, I don't like to deal with that Steven. It was Steven.
That was in this paragraph.
He was like, we're talking about.
So,
Okay, so I got the first one, Cherokee.
like,
The
Israelites,
and then all the was asked of them to choose.
he did, they were in fear that they would take over, and so they just totally enslaved them. He said it's kind of different because they just killed them straight out. It's hard because like the Native Americans aren't necessarily how far as children. People, they still are as people, and they're still human beings.
So it's like, it's also, the natives were like, it was their home for white settlers. So it's not really cool.
Imagine China's kind of right now, like, this weird American kind of collective. He was different for every tribe too, because they were like really nice. Cherokee, they were really generous, right? Well, and then there was like the Apaches who were like kill everybody.
I'll give you another one that you might want better, that's a little easier. People that we have a perfect and original right to remain without interruption or molestation. Some people disagree with that simply because they said, listen, we've come, we've fought wars, we won. Really, the victor throughout history is chosen.
I mean, if they're,
Gets to stay.
the Bible is
You know, and I'm not saying that's right. That was an argument. This idea of, listen, we've defeated you
if they were like,
in battle. We get to call the shots about where you live. And then, like I said, that's not a great reason to me, but yet that was one. You know, this idea of, well,
Yeah, they don't
when Germany loses, the Treaty of Versailles can be
like,
incredibly they did it wrong, but yet it was made by the winners. You know what I mean? And anyway, so kind of one of those. But so these are, you'll say these are tough, but once again, if you go back to, this is the one that won. In fact, you may even want to use Jackson's own words. That might help you, because I've got that long quote in here by him here. It's just, yeah, this one. What good man would prefer a country covered with forests and rain? You know, that one there. Might be interesting just to take a look. And you could quote it if you want. You know, but.
And then there were the tribes that stayed, like the Navajos were tribes that the tribes stayed. Native fought, and then so they just dropped them all in this ring.
where's the,
Like they put the current
So we have.
and then all of them together. It's like Hiroshi
Okay.
This is they're trying to put like and there's still all these like there was still contention behind it.
No, it was,
In America.
they were asked to change.
They just
And they did, they had the
there you go. Then there won't be the restoration.
All right, Jerry. What are you thinking? What are you looking for? What do you hope to hear from both sides?
Sounds like we're all pretty much on one side, it's gonna be hard to for the other side to convince us of that, right?
All right. Okay, fantastic.
Cultural beauty, excellent.
Yeah.
when Kit Carson kicked out the Valley, like there was no sympathy or charity was like given in. And the Trail of Tears, it lost its president, it took away all their resources, and then when they came back, the depression, they killed off all their cattle, or all their sheep, and all the livestock and stuff. So they just weren't treated with any respect. So.
What do you think of Thomas Jefferson said they didn't want to be part of Canada, so they were kind of stopping the Noah's work. So what do you think the proper way to do that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I think for me, and this goes back to the church's official statement about immigration from 2011. This one I think is an interesting one. It's just saying whatever needs to be done has to be done legally. And so if you're breaking laws in the name of making life better, or making something right, or finding the right solution, that can't be right. And so I think you have to just start there. That no matter what you're going to do in terms of where you take the Cherokee and other tribes, you can't go against the Supreme Court to do it. You can't steal to do it. You can't kill to do it. You can't lie to do it. Because if you're doing those things, what you're doing is going to be wrong. This idea of doing a good thing in a bad way doesn't make it good. Sometimes people argue that. They're like, oh, well, I'm doing something good. So well, it's better to, help my child, so I'll steal something so that he can be the hero in the baseball game and have high self-esteem. Well, it would be better if he didn't have the baseball bat that you stole from the store. You know what I mean? That's the thing. So I think that's one thing to sort of consider. Because I think that in a lot of ways, if you think about Ethan, like Joseph Smith in 1844, with his presidential platform, this idea of slavery, I think he's way ahead of his time with this idea that, number one, you have these two issues. We believe in life, we believe in liberty, and we believe in property. Right? On the one hand, slaves were considered to be property, the legal property, and financially they were considered as good slaveholders. And Joseph understood that. But he also understood that the slaves were being denied their right to liberty, just as humans. That they are children of God, and therefore have this invisible backpack of rights to life and liberty. And so what he said was, you have to honor both rights until you can move on and change the nation. Because at that time, right, slavery was legal. You couldn't just say, well, something's illegal, so let's take everything. What he was advocating was not abolition, but we will give the slaves their liberty by freeing them, but we'll only do it if we then honor property by paying the slaveholders for the sale of Western lands. And so essentially the government would sell land to settlers. When the settlers bought the land, they would then use that money to compensate the slaveholders for the slaves they'd be losing to freedom. And so he said that way there's a balance where you're upholding the law, but you're also moving to a better place for the slaves. They could if people were willing to sell it. And sometimes people were, and others just they weren't. In fact, we'll see in the next talk in the Black Hills. This was kind of a sacred to different myths about those hills and their creation stories and other stories in their mythology. And so originally, there was a treaty that had deeded the Black Hills to the Sioux. Say, hey, by treaty with the U.S. government, this is your land. You move here. So they kicked them out of a certain area and said, you can go here, though. They're like, okay, so we're here now. But then when people found gold in the Black Hills, suddenly they said, well, we want it. And they said, well, it's not for sale. They said, okay, well, if it's not for sale, come and take it. And then so you're like, wait. And so we'll just see this, these principles of just basic honesty and legality are being violated. And that's where, I don't know what the best solution would have been, but I think it certainly had to have started with doing things legally and not breaking laws.
Just jot those down so you get those first.
Some different situations. I don't know, there are just people, just people.
Sure.
Treat their slaves not really well.
Sure.
And then my brother just keeps on arguing with me.
Why would
She's like, he will never admit that I love him. He just keeps arguing like he's saying
Did train you guys to be the person that you'll never admit?
anyway.
It's too you get a chance to get his foot up.
See, I know all these arguments.
Because before, that's how we
Let's not be overly competitive.
competition is good. It gives you higher quality and
Honestly, we always have the basic anyway. Yes.
just start moving. All that when there's peace. So when we get
Camilla, did you have something?
Oh, yeah, I just think that, with the American restaurants, some tribes were definitely very
Intellectual philosophers here.
Sure.
and they were breaking the law themselves, so how do you deal with that when they're breaking the law?
Sure.
The only way to stop them was
Right, and I think that's a case where even you have a different law. For example, if you look at the idea of defend your family against bloodshed, where basically if you're fighting a defensive war, then you can fight and defend yourself, you know. But I think two wrongs certainly don't make a right. It's like if they're breaking the law, I don't think that justifies you breaking the law. But yet if they're attacking you, well then you have a different matter. And you're then thinking, okay, are we fighting a defensive war to remove them because they're attacking? Does that kind of make sense, Linda?
yeah, so it would be self-defense, so it would.
Right. Right. So in that case, I think that's like a different scenario, and then I wouldn't see it as breaking law because that's just like if normally we don't kill people, but yet when Japan came and started bombing people in Hawaii, and suddenly it was okay to fight them. You know what I mean? This idea of okay, there are definitely exceptions. We think about like even like documentary Section 88 and so on about that sort of thing. Immigration. What do you do when people fight you? You try not to get engaged, and eventually, the Lord let us know that
But then also
if we
you can
pursue
about how,
defending ourselves, that would be okay. You could be more blessed if you don't, but when you're fighting with God on your side,
yeah, this one is
Or some of the, like, America's attacking us and the fight back.
Definitely. All right, friends.
wait.
Well, here we go. Okay, you ready? Just however many you have at this point. Jury, are you ready? Are you primed? Your listening ears? Okay. Okay, you ready? We'll have our lawyers who are against. They'll go second because number one will go first. All right, so here we go. And grab a microphone.
Should I just read them all off?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay.
Here we go, jury. Are you ready? You may want to take some notes just to make that decision.
Okay, so our first point was the Cherokee people assimilated and did all that was asked of them to change, and they changed all their culture, and yeah, that was our first one. Anyway, our second one, the process of removal was very inhumane, and 25% of the people were killed just from the moving process, from the people that were sick and from infants. And then our third point was they had been robbed of their country and their land. Our fourth, they had a right to live on the land of their forefathers. Thomas Jefferson said all men are created equal. And then we had fought for our independence to get to this land, so we should understand their desire to have independence.
And then it says, what will stop them from taking our land in the future, even if we do?
Okay. Thank you very much, JT. Thank you, Leah. Great job. This is Angela. Okay. Thank you, lawyers. Jury, you've heard it. Okay. All right. Our lawyers who are for removal against the Cherokee position.
Can I hand me that mic?
There you go.
Prisoners.
You know what is
Co-counsel.
That's right.
Okay, so our first one is that in early America they were very aware of the Bible and they were religious, and that was part of what founded our nation. And so they might have seen an example of the Israelites and that promised land being given to them, and it was their birthright in a sense. And they used the process of removal to make that what it needed to be. And in the times when they did not remove everyone, assimilation only dragged them down into the corrupt culture of the lands that they were living in, and that ended up being a hindrance to the nation, and it destroyed their community in the long run.
Okay, so another point that we had was that America is kind of nationalistic, that basically it's all for the good of the society, and the Indians were kind of a drain on the society. They were called poor, ignorant, and degraded. And also, there's a quote by Jackson, I believe. He just saw them as obstacles that needed to be removed. So they were kind of a drain on their society, and it just brought them down, kind of like with the Israelites. And then also, they had tried assimilation, but it didn't work with the Cherokee. Neither the Americans there wanted it, nor the Cherokee wanted to be like them. It was kind of a forced assimilation. So from that, we got our next point, that it would be an advantage to both the Indians and the Americans for the Indians to be removed, because then they could flourish and grow away from the people who were getting in fights with them and wanted their land and everything, and the Americans wouldn't have to worry about getting attacked by the Indians or things like that. And then our last one is just where the Indians said that they wished to remain on the land of their fathers, but technically it's everyone's land, and it's where Adam and Eve first lived, and we are all descended from them, so technically it's our land as well. So, yeah. And we bought this land with our American blood when we fought the British and won. So
2 times.
We're not the British.
Thank you for that. Did you have anything else, Caleb? Were you plotting
He does.
a fifth? Okay.
He does, absolutely.
Oh, great. Okay, please.
If you think of something, go ahead. You go ahead and present. Sure. Okay. Do you want to introduce it though?
Okay. So in Doctrine and Covenants 49, it talks about how the Lamanites would be not there anymore, and that they would flourish as a rose because of that. They would be somewhere else and they would flourish there. And that revelation was given in 1831, which is, I believe, the year before, if I remember correctly, that all this was going on. So that context was there, that this would be blessed for them in the long run, and this was by God.
Great.
You want to read this?
The scripture referred to is in Doctrine and Covenants 49:24. But before the great day of the Lord shall come, Jacob shall flourish in the wilderness, and the Lamanites shall blossom as the rose. I don't know how coincidental it is. I believe Joseph Smith was probably pretty aware of what was going on in this country at that time. He had to have some knowledge of, as a future candidate for president of the United States, although it was a young church, he was probably aware of what was going on in Supreme Court cases, and perhaps may have had something to do with this revelation. how would they be able to blossom as a rose unless they can be transplanted into a different place? And
So they have to take
And-
Grand, boo.
Does the bailiff need to come and take you out?
Rip it out by the roots and toss it over there. Blossom.
You're saying you're a
Sorry.
weed.
Sorry, Granny.
that's all right. There's a peanut gallery every corner.
All right, that's right, that's right. All right, friend. Did you have anything else, or was that the end? Okay, jury. So go ahead and deliberate, and then let us know. Obviously, if we had more time, we could do some cross-examination and some rebuttals, and all that.
Please say something about the Israel
The jury is deliberating behind closed doors.
We weren't doing anything wrong.
Yeah, they were.
How would we do anything wrong?
I don't worship.
We
You
changed
gave it up, but they gave it up.
Jerry gave it up.
You ever seen the movie 12 Angry Men? Play? Yeah, it was an old, I think, what's the name of the, yeah, it's black and white.
That's a good one.
Yeah, oh, yeah, it's essentially, it's the play. It's the play, it's just that they just film it, and it all takes place in one room.
Like 5,000 years ago.
It's essentially a play.
You think they got any better?
Oh, I my wife and I read it. Yeah, it's kind of like
This source, so they must be educated.
To it. It's very similar,
But that, how does that give you the right to kick us out of our home?
Because we won the war with Britain.
Well, we're not Britain.
Yeah, but we won the war, so we're the victors, so we can do whatever we want.
But we lived here before.
That's a dangerous.
But we all lived here before that.
Like I say,
They're way longer than we
Hey, well, it was
Why can't you flirt
prophesied.
somewhere else? Go take over Canada. Like,
It was prophesied in the Book of Mormon so many times that the Lamanites
Go
would be
get the French
scattered
out.
and driven. And so we were just fulfilling prophecy.
Take your weeds somewhere else.
You are the weeds.
Hey, you're the weeds that have to choke the flowers to flourish. I disagree completely.
All right, jurors, have you had your time, you think?
This is a really hard argument.
Or do you need any more time?
Like, how do you make the roses flourish if you have to rip them out and toss them out?
And I think Camilla will be the lead
Okay, well,
juror,
the method
since
of
she is the rose among
transplant may
thorns.
not have been enough, but it's the thought that counts. That's your argument.
Since we're talking about, flower metaphors here.
I know you don't. Well, yeah, it's the result, not the method.
Are you ready? Okay, Camilla.
They meant to replant the flower.
And they destroyed 25% of the flowers while they were checking it over.
Well, the flower can reproduce, right? Isn't that the argument? All right, here we go. So Camilla, come to the front, our head juror. Come and give us the decision of the court, jury. Love to hear the jury's decision.
No, don't do that.
Yeah, you guys are evil.
We're all part of this kind of.
So I think the final decision we came to was that we need to look for a more charitable way to find a way to live in peace with the Indians. And so we are on side number one's side.
All right, we're clapping for the efforts of all of you. Good job. Okay, well, friends, I always love these little simulations with you. And of course, you could make them extend and go into more depth. But I thought you reasoned through some wonderful things. Thank you for that. We'll continue with a lot of these sort of extension arguments, and we'll see where these different ideas led to in our next topic. And so I just want to testify, though, of the power of reasoning. This is a very godly thing to reason together, which is what you did. All of the groups, all three groups, I heard you reasoning together. And I'm grateful that the Lord has let us know that we should reason together. And I think this could be perhaps a topic to reason together at the dinner table tonight. Maybe you could continue the trial over the potatoes and the gravy. Maybe the potatoes will start flying across the room by the end of the meal. Hit somebody in the head. But, and then you can just talk about transplanting potatoes and how they'll keep growing. But I felt each group did a wonderful job. The jury did a fantastic job, and group number 1 did a fantastic job. Group number 2 did a fantastic job. So thank you all so much. I'm grateful for the power of reasoning in our lives. And I say that in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Friends, we'll take a break and then we'll come back. All right. Thank you so much.
You chose the right thing, not the one that had the best argument. Not us. Rachel, look at this. I wrote down a great rebuttal. Rachel.
Great job, guys. Great job. I appreciate all the enthusiasm and the comments, the engagement. Thank you so much. Wonderful. Wonderful. All right.